for all of our aircraft owners and our clients out there, I just want to introduce you to Don Dwyer. He is the managing partner or co-managing partner. I probably have that wrong, Don, for Guardian Jet. Guardian is one of the largest aircraft brokerages. They do a lot of transactions, work with a lot of Fortune 50, Fortune 20 companies, and I'm really lucky to be able to call Don a friend, and he is certainly one of the leaders in the industry. So Don, I appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you. I'm honored and grateful for the opportunity to chat today, and it's always a pleasure.
So, you know, the only thing we really want to do for our owners and our clients, they've heard from me reasonably frequently over the last several weeks, but we really just wanted to get them information straight from the leaders and the people that are experienced in the field, so they have information and they understand what's going on. So Don, of course, participates, and his company winds up participating in the buying and selling of airplanes. So maybe you can just give us your thoughts with respect to how COVID has impacted the buying and selling of airplanes, maybe some of the trends that you're seeing, and in a little while, maybe we can talk about where you see it going kind of in the future.
Yeah, so it's had a dramatic impact. It's been a little excuse me, more of a roller coaster than I expected. Of course, you go back to March when there were some real key events like shutting down the basketball tournament that just kind of shocked everybody, and the phone stopped ringing here. The transactions slowed down, but not the transactions that started. In March, we had a decent March. We lost a few deals due to the pandemic, but for the most part, March stayed strong, but the phone shut down. So April, May, kind of tough months, but there was an almost, I'd say 4 or 5 week delay, and then the recovery started. So the phone started ringing. We noticed that it was a lot more people that wanted us to buy an airplane for them, that were talking about that. A lot of more people all of a sudden were not pre-COVID levels yet, but a lot more people were calling in on the listings we have. I think we have 55 airplanes for sale today. So the phones are back ringing for that. What we didn't get that surprised me, Andy, was we didn't get a lot of people telling us to sell their airplane like in 2008 and 2009, which I thought this financial crisis might mirror that more, and it hasn't. So what I think the biggest piece is that people really don't want to get on the airlines right now. Mm-hmm. I happen to believe a healthy airline industry is good for all of us, but right now the bump may be coming from a desire not to get on the airlines, and so people are out looking at airplanes.
Now, I know you wound up, I read the email that you sent me, some of the publication that you put out to some of your clients, and you were saying that you're hearing from a lot of your Fortune 50 companies that they anticipate coming out of COVID using their airplane more. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit about the information you're getting back, even anecdotally, from some of those folks?
Yeah, we happen to, we did a survey. We do a lot of benchmarking, and one of the things we were asked to do is look at personal use during COVID. Were they going to let executives use the airplanes personally? And we got a different answer than we thought. That wasn't going to change that much. But we did get to talk to 46 flight departments over a 3 or 4 day period. And these are big corporate multi-fleet operators. And they, almost to a company, were planning on the authorization for using the airplane going deeper into the company. Doesn't mean they were going to fly that much more, but it was a real desire to keep people safe and healthy. And that's one thing we've seen, especially with the big corporate operators who still aren't flying a lot, who still have, that are very careful about putting their people in harm's way. And harm's way means going to Europe, Asia, Tennessee, wherever, so their flying is still down, but their plans are that it'll go deeper. And I think it's an indication of the great response and how responsible these companies are behaving towards their employees.
So what do you think about, obviously, COVID has taken a toll on not just the aviation industry, but the rest of the economy. How do you balance, at least from what you're hearing, people using, corporate airplanes compared to the economy being so difficult and them not using, corporate airplanes at all? They're going back on the airlines and different things along those lines.
So, right now what we're seeing, and I will tell you, when I said roller coaster, this is a rapidly changing environment. But the one constant is I'm getting more bullish the deeper we get into this. The economy seems to, at least the market seems to be hanging in there. Corporate profits seem to be hanging in there. We're still, I'm better at airplane conversations than I am at global business economics, but we're sort of, there could be another shoe to fall in the economy in the future. But right now, we're seeing that private aviation, the flying numbers are up 60 to 70%. I just got some stuff from Tyson Weiss at ForeFlight that 60, 70% of where it was. That's pretty good compared to the airlines and where they're at. So there may be a bump here for general aviation as more people are attracted to it. There's a lot of first-time buyers are coming out of the woodwork right now. So everybody buying an airplane right now is value-driven. They're looking for a little bit of a deal, and that's okay. In hard times, we see that. But we also feel the pent-up demand in first-time buyers and then in probably upgrades that will follow. So it's an interesting time in terms of value. We've seen a little bit of a hit, not the fall through the floor like in 2008, 2009, but somewhere in the 10% range, the high side 20, depending on the deal. So values we think will take a little bit of a hit. They may recover, they may not. My crystal ball's just not as it broke in 2008. It hasn't recovered.
So you bring up an interesting thought with respect to values, and I'll ask this question and it's the same question but asked two different ways. Number one, if you are a first-time buyer, at least some of the things that we hear from the so-called tire kickers that are just kind of exploring the market, we're hearing that perhaps they think there is more value deals out there than there really are, meaning they think the market's going to wind up being significantly depressed. So my question is going to be maybe expand a little bit with respect to the fact that they're not being devalued. Same question coming at it a different way for all of our aircraft owners that are, have airplanes right now. Maybe you can comment with respect to, hey, don't panic. Your airplane didn't necessarily lose 50% overnight, but just what advice would you wind up giving people that are in the market looking to buy or sell? Are there certain models, certain categories, or things that are impacted more than others, or how would you advise them?
Well, we saw, I'll tell you some of the things that we missed. First of all, the fact that there were more buyers than sellers, that airplanes aren't coming onto the market. Now, you got to remember this was in an environment in 2019. We started saying towards the end of the year to our customers, wait a while before you buy, because we saw 2020 is a great year to buy an airplane from a value point of view. You had rising inventory levels. You had the rate of sale slowing down a little bit. So we just thought when that happens, you usually will see a softening in price. We tend to buy a lot of new airplanes for our corporate customers, and we saw the order books were good and the companies were disciplined, but we felt like it was a good year to go buy a new airplane too. And we'd sort of been saying that pre-COVID. COVID comes along and accelerates the whole thing. Just what we were saying, that there will be a little bit of a hit to value. Unlike in the past, we don't know what the recovery will look like. It's my favorite saying is, it's the economy, stupid. In 2000, well, after 9/11, I can't tell you how many people probably told you too, your business is going to flourish because no one's going to want to get on the airline. Right. Well, then they find out it's still pretty expensive, But there is some statistic that I find interesting, and it's something like the million people that have a net worth of $10 million or more, a million families, only 10% of them, 10 to 15%, use private aviation in any meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that number is going to grow, and that's good for people like you and me. I think overall this is going to have a positive impact, but the economy's got to be there, and I don't think anybody knows that yet.
Right. Right.
Some very good signs. Corporate profits are good, and the market's staying strong. So there's some very, again, we just keep getting more and more bullish.
Good stuff. And maybe we can kind of close on this. And again, you said your crystal ball was broken in 2008 and 2009. But if you were to project us out 12 months from right now, Don Dwyer, who's been doing this for a long time, what would you think we're going to wind up looking like then?
I think we're going to have more people using general aviation. I think that's going to be an outcome, because the people that have been on the fence that now, whether it's charter operator or management company, own an airplane, I think there's going to be more people join our industry. So I think that's going to be healthy. The fractional guys feel like they're starting to feel it already. So 12 months from now, we're planning on, pre-COVID levels or more. We have a growing company, so we've always been very bullish about what's out in front of us. I think we got to get, certainly the vaccine's going to help. I think we got to get through some, the reopening of America to have any kind of, because any kind of insight into it. Because the reality is, I don't know, Andy, and I had a lot of data about what's going on right now, but I just don't know. And so I'll tell you this, you and I have spoken in times like these. You get very involved in your business. You get very engaged and granular in your business. And I know that's been really healthy for me, and probably, so we're going to be different coming out, and I'm not ready to say what the market looks like though. Sorry, brother.
That's okay. I wouldn't hold it to you if you did. Well, hey, we really appreciate your time. Really, really valuable insights. Again, Don Dwyer, for all of our clients out there, Don Dwyer from Guardian Jet. They buy and sell airplanes. They do a great job. I'm really lucky to be able to call him a friend and a colleague. So thank you for doing our first video here with us. Hopefully it went okay.
Thank you very much.
And I know we'll be catching up before too long.
Hey, stay healthy, my friend, and thank you very much.
All right, so we'll get started here with our next interview. I have Brian Proctor with us here today, and Brian is the president and founder of Menti Group, which is a consultancy down in Dallas. And again, Brian, I get the chance to introduce a lot of our aircraft owners and our charter clients to my friends in the industry. And again, I'm really happy to say Brian is a great colleague and a great friend, and his business does some pretty incredible things, works with a lot of the Fortune 500, Fortune 100, Fortune 50 companies for a lot of the planning through his consultancy, does do aircraft acquisition and sales, different things along those lines. But Brian, what I've asked him to kind of touch on is how aviation and the products in aviation have kind of evolved, and really how has COVID-19 affected the industry and the people that are in the industry, and looking maybe for slightly different ways of doing things that they've done before, and really just give us his perspective and different things along those lines. So Brian, really appreciate you being with us here this afternoon.
Well, thanks, Andy. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure, and I appreciate those kind words. My phone is ringing behind me, so let me end that. It's all set. So apologize for that.
No worries.
Thanks for having me on. What would you like to talk about today?
So I mean, what are your thoughts? What are you seeing? I mean, we've all lived through this crazy time, and not that it's over, but COVID-19 has taken its toll. It's caused everybody to kind of think differently and do things differently. Some people say good, some people say bad, and you're pretty in tune with a number of the flight departments, and you are hearing, and people are asking questions, how should we be doing things differently? So maybe you can share some experiences with how that winds up looking and what you're hearing from the people that have airplanes out there.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. this morning I was actually on the phone with, or actually a Zoom meeting with one of our clients, and was meeting with the CFO of this company. And you know, in their world, we were in the process of doing a fleet plan for them when COVID started. And so in January and February, we were meeting with the senior leadership team. And today, a lot of the things that we learned during those interviews are completely, it feels like we did the interview 10 years ago, because you know, the reality that they're facing today is completely different than it was in February. And specifically, we're seeing a lot of things that are tying to this. And so as with you, you know, March was a really weird month for everybody, and you know, our world kind of stopped in March. And what we found, starting around the beginning of April, is that our phone was ringing quite a bit from companies who were in the assess mode, and so everyone was taking a step back. They were looking at their business and they were trying to figure out, you know, what does this look like? And just like your business, just like my business, they were building a 3-month, a 6-month, a 12-month, and a 24-month plan, and developing contingencies to see what would happen when and how that would impact their business. And then our role as part of that was to tie in the aviation component to try to make sure that they had the right assets and the right people to support the executive needs as they needed to. That window of time really went from the beginning of April until mid-May. And so for 6 weeks, we were heavy in the planning. And I think we did 16 or 17 Fortune 500 type company plans to help them kind of sort through what was going on. And in some cases, people wanted to expand, some people wanted to contract, I would say in most cases. Then in other cases, people were going to try to use this time to right size. And so maybe they had 2 airplanes, but they're misconfigured for the new mission. And on balance, what the number one driver that we're seeing is this equilibrium that people are trying to understand between how much of their travel that they had before will be pushed over to a Zoom meeting like we're on now, versus how much is going to be actually required. And so, you know, that ties into a concept that we started talking about maybe a month or 2 ago. And really what our clients are talking about is creating a health corridor around their executives when they travel. So from the moment you leave your house or your office, through the car to the airport, once you're in the airport, whether you get on a commercial airplane or a business jet, and you get on the other end, the car to either the hotel or the meeting place and back, and trying to create an environment around the executives and the families to keep them safe through that transportation continuum. And private aviation is the best way to ensure that. However, yeah, so we're seeing an increase in demand, but only in those trips that are absolutely necessary. Correspondingly, there's a decrease in demand, and it's going to be based off of how many of those meetings that you normally would have taken are you going to shift to a technology enablement mode like we're on right now. And most of our clients haven't figured that out. What we are seeing though, and we started seeing kind of mid-May, is the market is coming back to life. And I would say that right now our op tempo is probably off about 25% from where we were sort of pre-COVID. Revenues are still way off, but you know, it's a long cycle time and decision making takes a long time, but we'll get there. But there are a lot of new entrants into the market, people who have been on the edge, who have said, now I'm not going to fly commercially anymore. Let's use this as an opportunity to stick our toe in the water, and let's see if we think we're going to like private aviation as much as we think we will. And so right now we're working with a lot of concept buyers, first-time buyers, who have either chartered or flown fractionally in the past, who now want to have their own airplane. And most of these people are looking for actually companies like you, Andy, to manage the airplanes on their behalf. We're not seeing a lot of these people considering charter as an offsetting revenue source, but they're looking at sort of pure 91 management or 135 for convenience, but really that sort of pure management mode, where they're shifting from, you know, where you might think someone might start their own flight department. On the higher end of the market, we think that especially with corporations, there's a shift that's taking place where corporations want to go to more of an asset-light model and have flexibility built into the structure. And you know, right now we're working on a product to bring to market to try to meet corporations where they are and give them the source of lift that they need. And hopefully we'll be rolling that out here in the next couple of months. And so we're excited about that. But I would say, everything that we knew about aviation is changing, and it's changing pretty dramatically. When you look at just, some of the high op tempo models that are out there, if you think card and fractional and some of those, you have to wonder what pressures are going to be put into their business model because of the requirements to keep the airplanes clean from one passenger to the next. And so, and then you've also got the problems with the airlines that are flowing into this. And so Wednesday, I'm going up to Omaha, and normally from Dallas, that would be a day trip. I'd fly up in the morning and have a 2-hour meeting and fly home Wednesday night. And in this trip, I'm actually going to leave Tuesday afternoon to get there because there are not enough flights servicing it. I've got to kill Wednesday morning in Omaha doing something. We'll have our meeting, and then if I'm lucky, we'll finish early enough for me to get on a flight to come back to Dallas Wednesday night. And if not, it's another night, and then I'm coming back. Now, in a small company like mine, this is an important meeting for us, so I've got to go do that. But if you're running a multi-million-dollar business, a billion-dollar business, and you're trying to do that using the service levels that are existing today, it's going to be really hard. And so I think that as industries begin to open back up and people get back to work and they start pushing their business like they need to catch up from the 3 months we've just lost, it's going to be harder and harder and harder to do that with the resources that are available right now. And I don't think people have realized it yet because most people aren't truly flying yet and getting there. And so over the next 3 months, we're going to begin to see that.
So I'm hearing, maybe we can talk a little bit about a lot of the flight departments right-sizing the flight departments. Are you hearing anything anecdotally about the sphere of users, the number of executives that are allowed or entitled to use the airplanes? Is that changing within the organizations, and how is that figuring into the whole right-sizing concept?
I would say it absolutely is. And what we're beginning to see with the call we had this morning with our client, that they have a fairly restrictive usage policy around the aircraft that they own. They primarily support the CEO and his direct senior leadership team, and they will allow customer visits for the other usage on the plane. But the broader senior leadership team doesn't have access. And so that's sort of one example. When we look at most of our other clients, we've got one client right now that is using airplanes like you would an Uber, and they've got a group of engineers that are based up in the Northeast, and they're moving them around on a day basis. So they'll fly down to Dallas for a couple-hour meeting, fly the engineers home. They sleep in their beds. The next day they'll fly them to Minneapolis. They fly home, and then they'll sleep in their beds. And so they're back to this concept of this health portal. They're trying to minimize the contact points that their key people have and part of this travel dynamic. And so they're really out and back, and they're using the airplanes like I would commute to work. They're commuting across the country to different facilities. And so I think that what we'll see is a broader usage profile. And then it will be really interesting to see how, if a company goes from 3 airplanes to 2 or from 5 to 3, if they'll begin to pick up fractional shares or charter or cards to augment that loss of lift that's proprietary. And then, it'll be really interesting to see the pressure that's put on these systems to see if they can support this kind of post-COVID world where they've got to make sure the airplanes are clean. And that's going to become a big deal. And it's going to be hard for especially those high tempo operators to keep the tempo that they had before.
So I just wonder, and we'll wrap it up in here a second because 10 minutes creeps up on us pretty quick, but I wonder, and I'd love your opinion on, do you think a company like a Textron, do you think their midterm outlook is going to wind up being different simply because I'm projecting myself into what you just said there? And if companies are going to start using airplanes for lower level executives that are more taxi service type, and that probably sounds a little more simplistic than I mean, but if they're using them more as a station wagon, the Textron products, they're wonderful products, but they tend to fit that niche, that regional niche, things along those lines, as opposed to maybe a Gulfstream. And not that Gulfstream is going to lose market share, but I just wonder if that OEM in particular, Textron, could wind up seeing some growth opportunities in the next 12 to 24 months.
I don't know that question. That's one that we continue to think through here. But interestingly, I was on the phone with one of my friends at Gulfstream a few weeks ago, and we were talking about the market and what's going on. And I told him at the time, I said, your number one competitor no longer is Bombardier or Dassault. Your number one competitor is Zoom. And for those, with the case with the engineers, I think that was one of those places where those guys actually needed to be on site, hands-on, touching things. Think surgery, you kind of have to be there. But if there's a way to reduce exposure and using technology to do it, I think that Zoom is going to be the biggest competitor to our marketplace for the next 18 months. And but there are certain things you can't do with Zoom. You can't operate on someone and be there and teach them how to use a medical device. You can't vacation on Zoom. There's certain things that you just can't do. And so as good as this new tool is for all of us to use, I think that it's just hard to replicate face-to-face interaction. And so the way we're describing around here is that travel is going to decrease, but the travel that's going to happen is going to be more important. And so I definitely know that there's a place for business and private aviation in this continuum. How much of it gets replaced with technology will be a really interesting study. And I think that that's going to be the balancing act that we're going to be dealing with. And it really sort of ties down into what level in the organization people are able to push access to. And in our opinion, the more utilization you can get once you have the fixed level of capital that's invested in the airplanes, companies need to use them. And so I think that we'll see fewer and fewer companies flying 300 hours a year and more flying 450, 500, have one asset, but just flying it more. And, if you think about a $40 or $50 million Gulfstream or Bombardier product or Falcon, or even a $15 million Citation product, that you can staff pilots fairly inexpensively relative to the amount of capital that you got employed in the asset. So I think that that's what we'll see.
Well, that's great. Well, hey, appreciate your time. Again, I made the promise to our aircraft owners and our clients that we're going to try and keep these somewhere in the vicinity of 10 minutes, but this information has been great. And again, I know our folks wind up finding a lot of value in hearing this from the leaders in the industry like yourself. I always enjoy getting together and speaking with you. And I'll tell you what, if you had that answer on Zoom and how much of the travel is going to get replaced, and you knew that right now, then I'm just going to wind up planning on visiting you at your island down in the Caribbean someplace. So, hey, it was great talking to you. We'll catch up, I'm sure, in the next week or so. And thank you for all your time.
Thank you. Stay healthy.
Bye-bye.
Take care.